Have you ever been in that painful silence? When the texts stop, the calls fade, and suddenly it's just quiet? You replay every moment, wondering what went wrong. But what if that silence isn't rejection? What if it's a mirror showing you what needs healing, not what you've lost, because silence doesn't always mean it's over? Sometimes it's the universe forcing you to face yourself, your fears, your insecurities, your truth, and when you understand that silence becomes your greatest teacher, not your punishment. Let's hear now what Tony Robbins has to say about this powerful truth, and if you want more life-changing insights like this, make sure to like and subscribe our channel, The Mind Architect, for more videos.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. Have you ever experienced silence in a relationship? I'm talking about those moments when communication stops, when the calls don't come, and the texts remain unanswered. It feels like an emotional void, doesn't it? But here's the truth. It's in those moments of silence that the loudest conversations actually happen. You see, when a man and a woman stop contacting each other, it's not just about the absence of words, it's about what the silence represents. And if we're being honest with ourselves, silence isn't the villain here. It's a mirror. The power of space in relationships. Space is not your enemy, it's your teacher. When communication stops, it creates a vacuum. And what fills that vacuum is either fear, resentment, or self-awareness. Many people rush to fill silence because they fear being alone with their thoughts. But sometimes stepping back is the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them. Emotional triggers and healing. When two people stop talking, all the unresolved emotional triggers come to the surface. That silence is an opportunity, a space where you get to ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Why does their absence hurt me so much? Because maybe, just maybe, the pain isn't coming from the other person. Maybe it's coming from within you. Self-worth and dependency. Listen, you cannot love someone from a place of emotional dependency. Love isn't, I need you to feel complete. It's, I am complete, and I want to share that with you. The silence reveals whether you were in that relationship out of genuine love or because you needed validation, comfort, or distraction from your own insecurities. The role of communication styles. Men and women often handle silence differently. Men might withdraw to process their emotions internally, while women might crave connection and dialogue to find resolution. Neither approach is wrong, but when these styles clash and communication stops, the gap widens. Awareness of this difference is key to breaking the cycle. Growth through reflection. Here's something profound. Silence is not always an ending. It's a pause, and in that pause, you have two choices. You can either use it to reflect, grow, and rebuild, or you can use it to harbor bitterness and blame. What you choose will determine whether this silence becomes a bridge or a wall. Decisions vs. reactions. Most people let silence become permanent because they act out of emotional reactivity instead of conscious decision-making. Are you letting pride stop you from reaching out? Are you letting fear stop you from expressing your truth? Silence doesn't have to mean finality. It can mean clarity, but only if you approach it with intention. In conclusion, own the silence. So here's the bottom line. Silence is not the enemy. It's an invitation. An invitation to heal, to grow, and to redefine what love and connection mean to you. Don't fear the silence, lean into it. Own your emotions, own your growth, and when the time is right, if the connection is meant to be, you'll know exactly what to do. Because true love isn't afraid of silence. True love learns from it. Thank you. Now go out there, own your space, and create meaningful connections. You know, one of the most overlooked truths in relationships is this: space is not your enemy, space is your teacher. But let me tell you something, most people are absolutely terrified of it. Why? Because space feels like emptiness. It feels like abandonment. But in reality, it's an invitation. An invitation to pause, to reflect, to breathe, and most importantly, to understand. When a man and a woman stop contacting each other, there's often this instant assumption that something is broken, something is beyond repair. But sometimes that space, that silence, is the exact thing that's needed to bring clarity, healing, and even a deeper connection. You see, human beings have this deep primal need for connection. And when that connection is disrupted, our survival brain kicks in. We start asking, why aren't they calling? Did I do something wrong? Are they with someone else? And before we know it, our minds become this chaotic battlefield of assumptions and insecurities. But here's the truth: space isn't about them, it's about you. Space gives you the opportunity to confront your inner world. Because let's face it, relationships have a way of blurring our vision. When you're constantly in contact with someone, your focus tends to stay outward. You become consumed with their thoughts, their feelings, their reactions. But when the calls stop and the text goes silent, the noise begins to settle. And in that stillness, you're left with the one person you often avoid facing: yourself. Now, I know that sounds uncomfortable. Most people hate being alone with their thoughts because silence exposes the cracks. It brings up insecurities, fears, and past traumas. But listen, those cracks aren't there to shame you. They're there to show you where the light needs to get in. Space becomes the perfect canvas for you to ask the big questions. Who am I without this person? What do I really want from this connection? Am I seeking love or am I seeking validation? And here's the kicker: sometimes the answers to those questions can change everything. You might realize that the relationship was built on a shaky foundation, or you might realize that the connection was genuine but was being sabotaged by miscommunication or emotional baggage. Either way, space gives you the gift of perspective. Let me share something powerful with you. People often mistake space for indifference. They think if they really cared about me, they'd reach out. They'd fight for me, but love isn't always about constant closeness. Sometimes love is about trust, trusting that space can serve a purpose, trusting that silence doesn't have to mean the end. I've seen so many people rush to fill the silence because they can't handle the discomfort of it. They send long emotional messages, they call repeatedly, they beg for closure, for answers, but what they're really trying to do is escape the discomfort within themselves. You see, when two people are apart, there are two parallel journeys happening. One person might be processing emotions in solitude, while the other might be desperately trying to bridge the gap. But here's the secret: you cannot force someone to close the distance. You cannot force clarity to happen faster than it's meant to. Instead, your responsibility in that space is to focus on yourself. Are you showing up as the best version of you? Are you growing, healing, and reflecting? Because the truth is, if that silence ends and you reconnect without doing the inner work, you're just going to recreate the same patterns and end up in the same cycle of miscommunication and hurt. Space isn't about punishment. It's not about playing games or teaching the other person a lesson. It's about honoring the process. Sometimes two people need time apart to heal individually before they can heal together. And sometimes space reveals that the connection isn't meant to be rekindled at all. But either way, it serves a purpose. So here's what I want you to remember: don't fear space. Don't rush to fill it with noise, distractions, or temporary fixes. Embrace it. Use it. Because space isn't emptiness, it's an opportunity. An opportunity to grow, to learn, and to gain the kind of clarity that only silence can bring. And when you honor that space, whether the relationship comes back together or not, you win. Because you've grown, you've healed, and you've shown yourself the respect you deserve. Remember this: true love doesn't suffocate, it creates room to breathe. And sometimes the most powerful connections are the ones that survive the silence, not the ones that avoid it. When two people stop communicating, something fascinating happens. It's as if silence becomes a magnifying glass, exposing every emotional trigger, every unresolved wound, and every fear hiding beneath the surface. You see, emotions are powerful. They drive our actions, they shape our perceptions, and most importantly, they reveal the stories we've been telling ourselves about love, connection, and self-worth. And when contact stops, those emotions, they don't just disappear. They amplify. Let me tell you something: silence is not passive, it's active. It's like an emotional amplifier turned up to full volume, and whatever was buried deep within you starts bubbling to the surface. Maybe it's the fear of abandonment, the pain of rejection, or the haunting echo of an old heartbreak. And in that silence, your mind starts running wild. Why aren't they reaching out? Did I do something wrong? Am I not enough? Are they with someone else? You see, the silence isn't just about the other person, it's about what their absence awakens inside you. Most people think the pain they feel during silence is caused by the other person, but the truth is, much of that pain was already there, long before this moment. The other person just acted as a trigger. Their silence didn't create your insecurities, it revealed them. And this, my friends, is where the gold lies. because the silence creates an opportunity, a rare, often uncomfortable opportunity to face those wounds head on. But here's the challenge: most people don't want to face their emotional wounds. It's easier to blame the other person. It's easier to say, if they would just call, if they would just explain, if they would just care a little more, I wouldn't feel this way. But let me ask you something, is that true? Or would their call, their explanation, and their care just temporarily soothe a wound that's been festering for years? You see, emotional triggers are like alarms going off in your psyche. They're saying, hey, something here needs attention. Something here needs healing. And when two people stop communicating, it's like the volume of those alarms gets turned all the way up. And that's where the real work begins. Because now you're not just dealing with the silence, you're dealing with yourself. Most people run from this stage. They distract themselves with other people, social media, work, or even substances, anything to avoid sitting alone in that silence and asking the hard questions. Why do I feel unworthy of love? Why do I need constant reassurance to feel secure? Why does their silence make me feel invisible? These are not easy questions to ask, but let me tell you something, they are necessary. Because if you don't address these triggers, they will follow you into your next relationship and the next one after that. Now, there's something else that happens in the silence reflection. You start replaying conversations, analyzing words, and second-guessing your actions. This can be helpful, but only if done with intention. Because if you're not careful, this reflection can turn into obsession. You can find yourself trapped in a loop of self-blame and regret. But remember, this growth doesn't come from obsessing over what you could have done differently. It comes from understanding what you can learn from the experience. Healing isn't about finding ways to make the other person act differently. It's about finding ways to make yourself respond differently. Because here's the thing, when someone's silence triggers deep emotional pain in you, it's not always about them. Sometimes it's about that childhood memory of being overlooked, that past relationship where you felt disposable, or that belief you've carried for years that says you're not worthy of consistent love. But this is where the real transformation happens. When you stop running from the discomfort, when you stop numbing the pain, and you sit with it, truly sit with it, you start to heal. And when you heal, silence no longer feels like abandonment. It feels like space. Space to breathe, space to grow, space to let go. Now, I'm not saying this process is easy. In fact, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But it's also one of the most rewarding. Because when you heal those emotional triggers, something incredible happens. You stop needing someone else's presence to feel whole. You stop letting silence control your peace. And you start showing up in your relationships not as someone desperate for validation, but as someone who is whole, secure, and emotionally resilient. So the next time silence shows up in your relationship, don't run from it. Lean into it. Listen to what it's trying to teach you, because sometimes silence isn't there to punish you, it's there to heal you. And if you can sit with that discomfort long enough, you'll come out on the other side stronger, wiser, and more connected to yourself than ever before. And when that happens, whether the relationship is rekindled or not, you'll know one thing for sure: you've grown. And that, my friends, is a victory no silence can ever take away. One of the most profound revelations silence brings in relationships is the question of why we seek connection in the first place. When communication stops and the other person isn't there to provide their presence, their words, or their attention, something deep within us begins to stir. It's as if we're forced to confront a mirror that reflects whether our love was built on genuine connection or on emotional dependency. You see, self-worth and dependency are often tangled together so tightly that it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. Here's the truth: if your sense of self-worth is anchored to someone else's attention, validation, or affection, silence will feel like an attack. It will feel like proof that you are not enough, that you are unworthy of love, or that you failed in some unspoken way. But let me tell you something powerful: your worth is not determined by someone else's ability to show up for you. It's not determined by their texts, their calls, or their words. Your worth is inherent. It's something you bring with you into every interaction, every connection, and every moment of silence. But here's where things get complicated. Many of us enter relationships with unhealed wounds, hoping the other person will fill the gaps. Maybe it's the gap left by absent parents, by a past betrayal, or by years of feeling unseen and unheard. So when someone pulls away, When communication stops, it's not just the absence of their presence that hurts, it's the reopening of all those old wounds. It feels like confirmation of every fear we've carried. I'm not lovable. I'm not enough. I'm easily replaceable. But let's stop right here for a moment, because this silence, this emotional void, is actually a powerful opportunity. It's an opportunity to ask yourself some deeply uncomfortable but necessary questions. Am I in this relationship because I genuinely love this person, or because I'm afraid of being alone? Am I seeking a connection, or am I seeking someone to complete me? Because, my friends, there's a massive difference between needing someone and choosing someone. When you need someone to feel whole, you place the burden of your happiness on their shoulders. You make them responsible for soothing your fears, silencing your insecurities, and filling the gaps in your self-esteem. And let me tell you, that's not love, that's dependency. And dependency breeds resentment. Because no one, no matter how loving, caring, or attentive, can carry the weight of your self-worth. But when you choose someone from a place of wholeness, everything shifts. You no longer cling to their attention as proof of your value. You no longer crumble in their silence, because your self-worth isn't up for negotiation. It's anchored in something deeper, something internal. Now, does this mean you shouldn't care if someone you love stops talking to you? Absolutely not. We're human. We crave connection. We desire reassurance. And yes, it hurts when that connection is disrupted. But the difference lies in how you process that hurt. Are you spiraling into a pit of self-blame and self-doubt? Or are you recognizing the hurt, sitting with it, and reminding yourself of your inherent value? You see, silence often reveals whether we've been using a relationship as a crutch to avoid our own healing. Let me tell you, that's a hard pill to swallow. It's hard to admit that maybe we've been looking to someone else to do the inner work that only we can do. But here's the beautiful part. Once you recognize this, you have the power to change it. You have the power to shift from needing someone to choosing someone. Dependency says, I can't live without you, but love says, I can live without you, but I'd rather not, because I value you and what we share. That's the difference. That's the shift. And silence, painful as it may be, can be the catalyst for that transformation. This space, this pause in communication, is a moment for you to reclaim your sense of self. It's a moment to ask yourself, who am I outside of this relationship? What do I bring to the table? What kind of love do I want to give and receive? Because when you do the work to answer these questions, something incredible happens. You stop being afraid of silence. You stop fearing the absence of someone else's validation, because you've already validated yourself. And here's the final truth. The most powerful relationships are not built on dependency. They're built on two whole people coming together, not to complete each other, but to complement each other. They're built on mutual respect, mutual growth, and mutual choice. So if you find yourself in the silence right now, if you're feeling that gnawing sense of unworthiness, pause. Take a breath and remind yourself of this: you are worthy. You are enough. And your value does not depend on someone else's presence or absence in your life. Do the work. Lean into the discomfort. And when the time comes, whether you reconnect with that person or not, you'll walk away stronger, wiser, and with a deeper sense of self-worth than you've ever known. Because true love doesn't come from dependency, it comes from freedom. And freedom starts with you. One of the greatest misunderstandings in relationships comes from how men and women process and express emotions, especially during moments of conflict or silence. You see, communication isn't just about words, it's about how those words are delivered, when they're delivered, and why they're delivered. And when communication breaks down entirely, when two people stop talking, it's often not because they don't care about each other, it's because they're speaking completely different emotional languages. Let me paint a picture for you. A man faced with emotional tension often withdraws. He goes silent, not necessarily because he doesn't care, but because he's processing internally. For many men, silence isn't avoidance, it's strategy. It's an attempt to regain control over emotions that might feel overwhelming, but from the woman's perspective, that silence can feel like rejection. It can feel like abandonment. She might be thinking, why isn't he talking to me? Why is he shutting me out? But what she doesn't realize is that for him, silence might actually be his way of protecting the relationship, his way of ensuring he doesn't say something hurtful in the heat of the moment. On the other side, women often use conversation as a tool for connection, for healing, and for resolution. When a woman feels tension or conflict, she wants to talk it out. She wants to express her emotions, unpack them, and find a shared understanding. But when she tries to reach out and gets met with silence, it feels deeply personal. It feels like her emotions are being dismissed or invalidated. And so she pushes harder, she sends more texts. She tries to start more conversations, and the man, already overwhelmed, withdraws even further. Do you see the cycle? He withdraws because he needs space to process. She pushes for connection because she needs reassurance. And the more she pushes, the more he retreats. The more he retreats, the more abandoned she feels. It's not malice. It's not about a lack of love. It's about a difference in communication styles. But here's the thing, most people aren't aware of this difference. They don't realize that men and women often have opposing instinctive responses to emotional tension. So instead of seeing each other's behavior as a coping mechanism, they see it as the man thinks, why can't she give me space? The woman thinks, why can't he just talk to me? And both people end up feeling misunderstood, undervalued, and hurt. You see, silence doesn't always mean, I don't care sometimes. Silence means I don't know how to say what I'm feeling. Sometimes it means I'm afraid of making things worse. And sometimes it means I need time to understand myself before I can explain myself to you. But in a world where we expect instant responses, instant gratification, and instant emotional clarity, silence feels intolerable. The key here is understanding. Understanding that men and women often approach emotional processing differently. Understanding that silence doesn't always mean rejection. Understanding that communication isn't just about talking, it's about timing and intention. A man might need silence to find his emotional footing, while a woman might need conversation to feel secure. Neither approach is wrong, they're just different. But here's where the real challenge comes in. Who's going to break the cycle? Who's going to step up and say, I see you, I understand that we're approaching this differently, but I'm willing to meet you halfway? Because let me tell you something, relationships don't thrive when two people demand to be understood. They thrive when two people commit to understanding each other. If you're a man who tends to withdraw into silence, ask yourself this: am I communicating why I need space? Am I reassuring her that my silence isn't about a lack of love, but about a need for clarity? And if you're a woman who tends to reach out in moments of tension, ask yourself, am I giving him the space he needs without interpreting it as rejection? Am I trusting that his silence might be his way of finding the words he needs to express himself? You see, silence isn't the enemy, it's a tool. But like any tool, it can build bridges or create walls. It all depends on how it's used. If silence is used intentionally to reflect, to process, to reset, it can become a doorway to deeper understanding. But if silence is used as a weapon to punish, to control, or to manipulate, it becomes toxic. At the end of the day, communication is not about perfection. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing your patterns, owning them, and being willing to meet your partner where they are not where you wish they would be. Because when two people commit to understanding each other's communication styles, silence no longer feels like rejection, it feels like a pause. And in that pause, there's room for healing, growth, and reconnection. So here's the takeaway. Don't assume silence always means disinterest. Don't assume words are always the answer. Learn to recognize the difference between healthy space and emotional avoidance. And above all, approach every moment of silence with curiosity rather than fear. Because sometimes the deepest understanding happens not in the noise of words, but in the quiet spaces between them. When communication breaks down and silence takes its place, one of the most transformative lessons we can learn is how to sit with ourselves to confront the thoughts, emotions, and fears that arise when the noise of constant interaction fades away. Silence isn't just an absence of communication, it's an invitation to step inward, to reflect, and to gain clarity about who you are, what you want, and where you stand in the relationship dynamic. And let me tell you something, that kind of self-awareness is rare. It's also powerful. You see, when two people stop communicating, the natural instinct for most is to externalize their focus. They'll spend hours overanalyzing what the other person might be thinking, replaying past conversations in their heads, and crafting hypothetical scenarios about what could have been done differently. But here's the truth, none of that brings you closer to growth. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of external dependency, where your peace of mind is tethered to someone else's response. But silence, when embraced intentionally, offers something far more valuable: an opportunity to face yourself. And let me tell you, facing yourself isn't easy. It's not glamorous. It doesn't come with instant answers or guaranteed outcomes. But it is necessary. Because in those quiet moments when there's no distraction, no external validation, and no one else to blame or reassure you, you start to notice patterns. You start to see the fears you've been avoiding, the insecurities you've been hiding, and the emotional wounds you've been carrying. This is where emotional resilience is born. Emotional resilience isn't about pretending you don't feel pain. It's about learning to sit with that pain without letting it control you. It's about asking yourself the tough questions. Why does this silence bother me so much? Why does their absence make me feel unworthy? Am I seeking their validation because I don't know how to validate myself? These are hard questions, but they're the doorway to true self-awareness. Most people never get to this point because it's uncomfortable. Silence feels heavy, and the emotional noise it stirs up inside can be deafening. So instead, they rush to fill the void texting, calling, distracting themselves with work, or even jumping into another relationship. But every time you avoid sitting with yourself, you miss an opportunity to grow. You miss an opportunity to become someone who isn't shaken by someone else's silence, because your sense of self is rooted within you, not in how someone else shows up. Here's the powerful thing about leaning into silence. It forces you to clarify your own needs, boundaries, and expectations. Are you holding on to this connection because it aligns with your values and vision for your life, or because you're afraid of being alone? Are you genuinely seeking connection, or are you trying to fill a void within yourself? These are the questions that silence brings to the surface, and the answers can be life-changing. Another crucial realization that often comes from embracing silence is that your happiness, your peace, and your emotional stability are your responsibility, not theirs, not your partner's, not your friends, yours. You cannot outsource your emotional well-being to someone else and expect them to carry it for you. And when you sit in the stillness and start to reclaim that responsibility, you become incredibly powerful. Because now you're not reacting to someone else's behavior, you're responding from a place of clarity, calm, and self-respect. Let me make something clear. Silence doesn't mean you stop caring about the other person. It doesn't mean you shut down emotionally or build walls around your heart. It means you're giving yourself space. Space to breathe, space to reflect, and space to choose your next step intentionally rather than reacting out of fear, insecurity, or desperation. When you learn to embrace silence, you realize that it's not the enemy, it's a teacher. Silence teaches patience. It teaches self-control. It teaches the value of thoughtful reflection over impulsive reaction. And most importantly, it teaches you that your emotional state is something you can regulate, something you can own, regardless of how someone else behaves. This kind of emotional maturity isn't just beneficial for you, it transforms your relationships. Because now when you do return to communication, you're not coming back from a place of fear or desperation. You're coming back from a place of wholeness. You're able to speak clearly about your needs, your feelings, and your boundaries without projecting your insecurities onto the other person. And here's something beautiful: when two emotionally resilient people communicate after a period of silence, the conversation is different. It's not about blame. It's not about proving who was right or wrong. It's about understanding. It's about connection. And it's about moving forward with intention and clarity. So here's the challenge for you. The next time you find yourself in the discomfort of silence, resist the urge to run away from it. Resist the urge to fill it with noise. Instead, lean into it. Sit with it. Ask yourself the hard questions. And most importantly, listen not just to the silence itself, but to what it's trying to teach you. Because when you can sit in silence, when you can find peace within yourself despite the absence of external validation, you become unshakable. You become someone who isn't defined by someone else's presence or absence. And that, my friend, is the foundation of true emotional freedom. When two people stop communicating, whether in a relationship, friendship, or partnership, the silence isn't just an empty space, it's an amplifier. It magnifies the emotions, thoughts, and energy that have been buried beneath the surface. And while most people focus on the absence of words, they often overlook the presence of energy, the unspoken language that continues to flow between two people, even when they aren't speaking. Because here's the truth: energy doesn't lie. Words can be manipulated, actions can be misinterpreted, but the energy two people share, whether it's loving, tense, resentful, or indifferent, speaks louder than anything else. You see, every relationship carries an emotional frequency. When two people are aligned, their energies flow in harmony. Communication feels natural, Understanding feels effortless, and even disagreements are navigated with a sense of mutual respect. But when something disrupts that frequency, whether it's a misunderstanding, hurt feelings, or unaddressed resentment, words might stop, but energy keeps talking. You can feel when someone is emotionally checked out, even if they're physically present. You can feel when someone is holding back, even if they're saying all the right things. This is why silence is so powerful. It strips away the illusion created by words and leaves only the truth of the energy. It's why being in the same room with someone you're at odds with can feel heavy, even if no one says a word. It's why a text that doesn't come feels louder than 1,000 spoken sentences, because in that silence, the energy becomes undeniable. And for many people, that truth is uncomfortable. It's much easier to get lost in surface-level conversations, blame games, or constant distractions than it is to confront the raw, unfiltered energy that silence brings to light. But here's the thing, silence also creates space. And in that space, there's an opportunity to reset the emotional frequency, to recalibrate the energy between two people. Sometimes distance isn't about punishment, it's about perspective. It's about giving both people room to step back, breathe, and reassess not just their words, but their intention. Because intention is everything. You can say all the right things, but if your energy is off, if your intention isn't pure, it will be felt. This is where emotional alignment comes into play. If two people come back together after a period of silence, but their energies are still misaligned, the same patterns will repeat themselves. The same arguments will resurface, the same wounds will be reopened, and the silence will return, this time louder, heavier, and more damaging. But if both individuals use that silence to reset their own energy, to clarify their intentions, and to let go of emotional baggage, then reconnection becomes not just possible, but transformative. It's also important to recognize that energy isn't always mutual. Sometimes one person might be ready to heal, to communicate, to reconnect, while the other remains stuck in a cycle of resentment, fear, or avoidance. And here's the hard truth: you cannot control someone else's energy. You cannot force someone to meet you where you are emotionally. What you can control is your own energy, your own alignment, and your own emotional clarity. This is why self-awareness is such a critical component of navigating silence. You have to ask yourself, what energy am I bringing into this connection? Am I approaching this situation from a place of love and understanding, or from a place of fear and insecurity? Am I holding on to resentment, or am I allowing myself to let go and move forward? These questions aren't easy, but they're essential. Because the energy you bring into a relationship sets the tone for every interaction, every conversation, and every silence that follows. Sometimes silence is the universe's way of giving you space to shift your energy. It's a pause button, a moment of stillness that allows you to step back and ask yourself, what do I really want here? Do I want resolution, or do I want to be right? Do I want connection, or do I want control? These aren't surface level questions. They're the kind of questions that require you to dig deep, to confront your own shadows, and to take responsibility for the energy you're bringing to the table. And here's something profound: when you align your energy, when you approach communication from a place of clarity, love, and emotional maturity, people feel it, even if they're silent, even if they're distant. Because energy transcends words. It doesn't need explanations, justifications, or proof. It simply is. But aligning your energy doesn't guarantee that the other person will do the same. And that's where acceptance comes in. Sometimes the lesson isn't about fixing the relationship, it's about recognizing when your energy is no longer aligned with someone else's and having the courage to let go with grace. You see, silence isn't just about communication between two people, it's about communication with yourself. It's about asking, am I honoring my energy? Am I staying true to my values? Am I showing up as the best version of myself, regardless of how the other person is showing up? When you approach silence from this perspective, it stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like an opportunity. An opportunity to reset, to realign, and to either reconnect with the other person from a place of authenticity, or to move forward with peace and clarity. At the end of the day, relationships are an exchange of energy. And silence? Silence is the space where that energy becomes visible, undeniable, and if you're willing to embrace it, deeply transformative. So don't fear silence. Don't rush to fill it with empty words or surface-level gestures. Lean into it, listen to it, and let it guide you not just back to the other person, but back to yourself. At the core of every meaningful connection lies one undeniable truth. Communication isn't just about words, it's about understanding, intention, and emotional alignment. When a man and a woman stop contacting each other, the silence that follows isn't just emptiness, it's a mirror. A mirror that reflects the state of the relationship, the unspoken fears, the unresolved wounds, and most importantly, the space for growth both individually and together. This silence, when approached with awareness, isn't something to fear or avoid. It's a powerful teacher. It reveals the differences in how men and women process emotions. It exposes communication breakdowns, and it invites both individuals to step back, reflect, and reset. Silence gives us the opportunity to confront ourselves, to sit with our fears, our insecurities, and our patterns, and in doing so, it offers the chance to build emotional resilience, clarity, and a deeper sense of self-awareness. But here's the key: silence isn't inherently good or bad. It's how you use it that matters. It can be a tool for healing, self-reflection, and reconnection, or it can become a weapon of avoidance, punishment, and control. The difference lies in intention. Are you using silence to gain clarity and return to communication with a deeper understanding, or are you using it to create distance and emotional walls? At the same time, energy never lies. Even in silence, the energy between two people speaks volumes. It carries the weight of unspoken words, lingering resentment, and unaddressed feelings. And unless both people are willing to realign their emotional energy to meet each other with intention and vulnerability, words will only ever be surface-level fixes for deeper emotional misalignment. In the end, whether silence leads to reconnection or closure, it serves a purpose. It can heal, it can clarify, and it can empower. But only if both individuals are willing to lean into the discomfort, ask themselves the hard questions, and take ownership of their role in the dynamic. So let me leave you with this: silence isn't the enemy, it's an opportunity. An opportunity to listen, to understand, and to grow. Whether that growth happens together or separately, the choice is yours. But one thing is certain: how you navigate silence will define not just your relationships, but your relationship with yourself. So don't fear it. Embrace it, and let it guide you toward clarity, connection, and emotional freedom.